On Christmas Eve 1914, along a frozen trench line in Belgium, a German soldier stood up, unarmed, and walked into no man's land. Within an hour, thousands of men on both sides had climbed out of their trenches. For the next 48 hours, the war simply stopped. Not because of orders from above, because the men fighting it decided it would. The Christmas truce was not a ceasefire. It was a refusal documented in letters home, in photographs taken in no man's land, in military records that commanders on both sides tried to bury. The soldiers who participated were threatened with court-martial if it ever happened again. Some were transferred to different units. Others were warned that fraternization with the enemy was treason. The truce was not repeated in 1915. Not because the soldiers did not want it, because their officers made sure it could not happen. What terrified the generals was not that the men stopped fighting. It was that they proved the war could be stopped, at any moment, by the people ordered to fight it. The official histories barely mention it. When they do, they call it an anomaly, a moment of sentiment that had no strategic significance. But the letters the soldiers wrote home tell a different story. They describe something that military command could not allow to be true, that the enemy was not the man in the opposite trench. The enemy was the order to kill him. On Christmas morning 1914, soldiers along the Western Front heard singing. It came from the German trenches. Silent Night, in German. The British soldiers stopped. They listened. And then they sang back. Same song, different language. By noon, men were standing on the parapets, unarmed, waving. By evening, they were in no man's land, shaking hands, trading cigarettes, showing photographs of families. They buried the dead together. They played football. They shared food. Some exchanged addresses and promised to meet after the war. These were men who had been ordered to kill each other the day before, and they would be ordered to kill each other the day after. But for 48 hours they chose not to. Historian Malcolm Brown spent decades collecting letters from soldiers who were there. The consistency across the accounts is what makes the event undeniable. Men from different units, different nationalities, different sides of the line, all describing the same thing. A shared understanding that the war made no sense, and that the only people who could stop it were the ones being forced to fight it. The truce was not universal. There were sections of the front where fighting continued. But in the sectors where it happened, it was total. No shots fired. No orders given. Just men standing in a frozen field, talking. One British lieutenant wrote that he spent an hour speaking with a German officer who had been a lawyer in Berlin. They discussed philosophy. They agreed the war was insane. Then they shook hands, returned to their trenches, and the next morning resumed trying to kill each other, because the structure demanded it. The generals were horrified, not because the truce was dangerous, because it was proof that the war was voluntary, that it continued not because it had to, but because the men with the power to stop it were not the ones dying in it. Orders were issued immediately. No future truces, no communication with the enemy, no unauthorized ceasefires. Any soldier who initiated contact would be charged with treason. The 1915 Christmas passed in silence. Men stayed in their trenches, not because they wanted to, because they knew what would happen if they did not. The photographs from the truce still exist. Men in uniform standing together, smiling. The images were suppressed for decades, not because they were graphic, because they were evidence. Evidence that wars do not continue because they cannot be stopped. They continue because stopping them requires the people with the least power to refuse the people with the most. And when that refusal happens, it is crushed. Not by the enemy, by the same command that sent them to fight. There is a memorial in Belgium now. A small plaque marking the area where some of the truce took place. It does not say what the truce meant. It does not say why it never happened again. It calls it a moment of peace, which is true, but incomplete. It was also a moment when soldiers on both sides discovered that the war was a choice, and that the people forcing that choice were not the ones making the sacrifice. The men who participated in the Christmas truce went back to killing each other. Not because the truce failed, because the system that created the war was stronger than the men who briefly stopped it. But for 48 hours, they proved something their officers never wanted proven: that the war could end the moment the soldiers refused to fight it. And that refusal, not the enemy, was what military command feared most.